A lot of your favorite YouTubers get it completely wrong when it comes to their coverage on how to make money in the Pokemon space. Today I'm going to tell you what is the actual opportunity that we're facing right now outside of just reselling cardboard or investing in sealed product. Before I dive into the topic, let me give a shout out to geminspector.com. I'm offering $1 per card pre-grading as well as $13 a card bulk grading through CGC. All of that is available to you at geminspector.com. I can't wait to work with you. So diving into the topic today, it's no secret that right now we have the ability as resellers to flip more cards faster than ever before in the hobby's history. That is largely due to the immense consumer demand as well as the business-to-business sales opportunities that are currently available in the hobby due to a lot of the back-end infrastructure in mystery packs and digital rips and things of that nature. And also, a lot of people who were investing in sealed product years ago are seeing their, quote, investments or otherwise known as speculations, become fruitful at this time after years of possessing them. There have even been some instances of boxes coming out, and doubling or whatever in price in the extreme short term as well. Boxes that released above MSRP and are now more expensive. But all of that is not the best way to secure your footing in a financial sense within the hobby. With a small caveat. So before I dive into this, the caveats that I'm going to be identifying for you are, number one, possessing a skill, and number two, having genuine connections and relationships inside the hobby. Those two things are pretty much essential to the process that I'm about to describe to you. And the good news is skill acquisition is a pretty, prevalent thing across all areas of life. You've probably acquired skills in many areas of your own personal life, and you utilize them to some capacity and every day. Now, think about that in terms of the Pokemon market or the trading card market at large and what skills there might be in order to utilize. Now, when we talk about the relationship factor, I'll start off by saying that I am fortunate to have made some very, very good friends and connections within this space over the course of the 6 or 7 whatever years that I've been participating here. And I'll also add that all of the friendships and acquaintances that I have made within the space were never with the sole intent of being able to leverage those relationships, right? It has just worked out that I've met a lot of like-minded people who are also ambitious and also like making things happen in the space, and so are where we previously got along on a social level, now a lot of those same people work with me at geminspector, and and I try to support their businesses and watch their content to the greatest extent possible as well. And it's just cool to see how when you get a group of ambitious people together, they kind of help push each other up, and I think that that's a beautiful thing. So it's not like this, a bunch of cannibalistic sharks swimming in the same water together or whatever. It's quite the opposite of that, right? It's like a lot of people synchronizing their rows on a rowboat to make the boat go by faster or whatever, cover more ground. So it's a very interesting thing to watch. So none of it is a parasocial or parasitic type thing. But I digress. All that is to say that there are opportunities within the space right now to produce something outside of reselling that can be economically beneficial. So one last thing that I'll cover as a tidbit. Sorry, I'm dragging this beginning part off, but hopefully it's informative enough to digest. But let me talk about why investing or reselling might not be the ideal way to make money in the Pokemon space for everybody all the time. And that's because whether you are churning and burning or holding, that makes you expose yourself to a great deal of capital risk. So you are deploying a bunch of money into these things, and you don't get that money back until you realize the price you're hoping will come to fruition upon sale. And so to put that into perspective, if you're operating as a reseller, which I have for years and still continue to do, you can only make as much money as you're willing to spend on that, right? So you are tying up a bunch of cash in cost of goods, so the actual item itself that you're purchasing, and then also you take into consideration services rendered, like grading fees, or other authentication services, or whatever the case might be, and then also whatever the shipping expenses, frictional sales fees, all of that is wrapped in as part of the capital that you're exposing to the market in pursuit of a profit margin. And that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, and it's completely viable at many scales, right? So you can be doing this as a collector, just selling extra slabs on the side in order to fund your own collection, or you could be generating a multi-million-dollar business doing this, and it is still just as viable at scale. And again, same idea with the investing thing. Every time you pick up a new booster box or single card that you want to sit back and hope appreciates over time, you're basically shelving not just that product, but you're shelving the cash associated with it as well that you spent. And so you're basically putting your money on hold for whatever the time horizon looks like. And the downside of that is, again, having that capital to deploy in something like flipping, where you're buying highly liquid cards and turning them over as quickly as possible. That's opportunity cost in that sense, but also, you just don't have that money as readily accessible. Fortunately, again, we're in a time in the hobby where things are selling faster than literally ever in history. So that's less of an issue right now than it ever has been. But wouldn't it be nice if you can make money without putting a bunch of your own cash on the table first? And that's what I'm going to propose to you. So I'll start with what is familiar to me, and that is Gem Inspector. I got the idea from Gem Inspector largely looking around the landscape and noticing other successful businesses within the Pokemon space, many of which are operated by people who you probably know if you're watching this video or you consume the content of. I'm thinking people like, James from Z&G Emporium, Retrospecs. I'm thinking about Catch 'em All Collectibles, Pokenomics, right? Like these types of people have established other, and not even just them. I'm also thinking about like Spat. I'm thinking about Grammar Collects. I'm thinking about BB. I'm thinking about Ray, Shining Cards and Collectibles. Like all of these people found some other way than just only flipping in order to make money in the space. Some of them are doing live streams, so they're basically branding their personality and their access to, high quantities of cards. Other people created infrastructure that allow others to make money on their behalf. And so all of that is to say that like the big economic opportunity that lives outside of just reselling or investing that doesn't require any significant capital exposure to yourself is solving a problem that exists within the hobby space already. And when we take a look at, Dan's Fanatics model, right? If you didn't know, you can grade with CGC and have those cards immediately auctioned through Catch 'em All Collectibles for $8.50 a card. You can do it through Gem Inspector at $9.50 a card. Going to Dan is a better deal, I'll acknowledge. But it's like, Fanatics is grading and turning over cards way faster than just standard CGC bulk, which you have access to at $13 a card through Gem Inspector as well, shameless plug. But they're turning it over faster. The downside being you have to auction everything as the submission becomes completed, right? So you don't have any chance at owning those cards back. It would probably be constituted as shill bidding if you bid on your own auctions to get the cards back, so I would not recommend that to any degree. But he has effectively provided a low-cost outlet for people to just offload cards on a pretty routine basis. So as long as you have enough like specific SKUs or like amounts of an individual card to meet his minimums and maximum thresholds per submission, you can be sending as frequently or infrequently as you want to establish cash flow through those auctions. When we take a look at like James, Z&G, he has a consignment service. And mind you, he wasn't the only business that started a consignment service. There were plenty that had existed for years before James even entered that scene. But James has established himself as having an extremely credible reputation. He has really stuck his neck out for customers, in many dicey instances. And the biggest value add that James is able to add to his customers is the fact that as he secured better deals with eBay in terms of his, percent fees, instead of just pocketing the difference and making the customers continue to pay the same amount of fees from start to now, he's actually passed on the savings to his customers. So effectively, the bigger James's business gets, the better deal we are getting as people who utilize his service. And again, these types of examples go on and on and on forever, right? You think about the biggest businesses within the space, TCG Player, you think about Troll and Toad, you think about, all these grading companies, Tag, CGC, PSA, like these were all started by a person in the hobby. And so when you actually think about things through that lens, like I'll candidly share some information about my service, Gem Inspector. I kind of saw that a lot of these successful people in the space were structuring their operations so that some amount of cash was being allocated to reselling high liquidity cards as quickly as possible. So there we have high volume, low margin in most cases. Most of these people also, to some extent, participated in low volume, high margin, speculative opportunities too. So for me, that often looks like getting involved in more niche TCGs and finding information that other people don't have access to because they're focused on the new shiny things instead. And then in addition to that, a lot of these like top tier people in the hobby, again, Dan Catch 'em All Collectibles, I throw Rusty in this, again, Retrospecs, all these types of people, they also have a branch to their operations where they are making income by providing an asymmetrically beneficial service to customers that is, almost a no-brainer to utilize. You can get better rates selling through James at Z&G Emporium than you can yourself in almost every value tier of card that you could possibly list. You can get Japanese sealed product from almost anywhere in the globe from Retrospecs in 3 days for extremely competitive rates. You can sign into, a Shining Cards and Collectibles live stream pretty much any time of day because they have multiple streamers who are going, pretty often. So you can bid on live auction cards and engage in some kind of like social community surrounding that topic around the clock. And so all of these types of services have such a low capital exposure. And with Gem Inspector, again, coming to the idea of like what skill I had, well, I just put my nose to the grindstone and I graded a lot of cards at both PSA and CGC for many, many years. And I eventually just swallowed, I took a gulp and took a risk. I put pen to paper and I figured out about how much it's going to cost to actually start this business up in terms of, registering the business with the state and federal government, purchasing the necessary tools and equipment to get this job done, obviously devising some kind of workflow that is efficient so I can get the cards back in the customer's hands as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. these types of things, it was just a math problem. Like putting everything on paper is adding clarity to the problem. And when you add clarity to a problem or add clarity to a fear, it becomes a lot less shocking. And so what turned out to be the case is I was able to start GemInspector. Again, we're talking like website development, registration of the name, development of the logo, all of this stuff. I was able to get this business off the ground for somewhere around $1,000. And $1,000 in our everyday lives is a lot of money. I don't care who you are, $1,000 has weight to it, right? And so when we think about like grocery money or paying the bills or XYZ thing, $1,000 is a lot. But when you have been flipping or reselling cards for, almost a decade like I have, spending $1,000, you don't really bat an eye in the Pokemon space. It is, just an average Saturday morning at a card show, right? Like you're spending multiple thousands of dollars. And so when I thought to myself, is it worth risking potentially wasting this whole $1,000 for the sake of potentially having an avenue of, an asymmetric value add to my customers and creating a revenue opportunity for myself with very low capital exposure? Because once I paid that $1,000 to get the business started up or whatever, there's not a whole lot of recurring fees that I now have to deal with. Like I don't have to buy basically anything in order for customers to ship their packages to me. Now I do offer complimentary return shipping, which is something that like PSA and CGC, the biggest grading companies that we have at our disposal, they don't even offer complimentary return shipping, but I do as some random dude who started up this service a couple months ago. But it's like, other than the return shipping and, however much boxes cost me per month and, how much I spend on advertising, I don't have to spend very much money to keep this thing running and to grow this thing. And so for me, it is extremely enticing to pursue something like that because, again, like capital is one of the most restrictive things in this space, particularly, whether you're looking at it through the lens of a collector or someone who's trying to do a revenue generating activity. It's like the amount of money that all of us have is finite. Now that's relative in some terms because you might meet someone who just started collecting or just started vending or reselling a couple of weeks ago and they're working with like hundreds of dollars. And then you also have people at a higher scale who are spending hundreds of thousands per month or week. And so all of that is a little bit relative, but still, like, you can only spend as much money as you have. And so the amount of business growth that you have is bottlenecked by that. So by providing some kind of actual, beneficial service to the larger hobby, broadly speaking, you're able to generate revenue without exposing yourself to that limitation or that bottleneck of how much money you have in your bank account. And I think that is something that many people don't discuss, probably because it seems so arbitrary. And what I mean by that is when Retro started his Japanese wholesale service, to me, it was like a stroke of genius, obviously. It's like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe more people aren't doing this. This is an awesome service to be able to provide. But when you actually zoom in and you look at the back-end infrastructure that he was able to set up, the connections that he's been able to establish over the course of the time offering this service, I know that he's discussed weeding out, people who weren't able to get product to people as quickly as others, or their prices weren't as consistent, or their inventory wasn't as reliably in stock as other people. He's weeded out those types of sources and stuck with the people who have his... who share his vision, right? Who are able to make things happen in the way that he envisions it all. And a lot of people view that type of like back-end work as a huge barrier of entry that makes this all impossible or seemingly impossible. But the reality is, my idea for pre-grading cards, I'm sure I'm not the only dude who's thought about pre-grading cards for money before, but a lot of people either, number one, question themselves on whether or not they have the expertise to do so because maybe they haven't graded that many cards for themselves, or B, they have some kind of, what would it be, like some kind of mental block about actually wrapping their brains around creating the workflows and the infrastructure and efficiencies in their processes to actually put it all together. And some amount of people that come up with ideas just are unwilling to pull the trigger on it. And so by you kind of like, again, taking a gulp and exposing yourself to the potential of failing, you can create an opportunity for yourself that could become extremely fruitful. Now, not every business, and this is pretty obvious, not every business that started in any space is guaranteed to be successful, but nothing could exist if not given the opportunity to do so. And I think that that's a very important message for people to hear. If you've been in the hobby for several years, there's probably some skill that you have that other people don't. And I know, some people have advanced technological skills and they're creating APIs to, expedite, various processes and efficiencies online. There's people who are pretty good at just like doing the work that other people hate, sorting cards and doing eBay listings. And so they're able to contract their work out in that way as well. And there's just tons of opportunities. And a good way of thinking about this is making a list of all the problems that exist in the hobby. What are all the things that are pain points, and what are the issues or the dilemmas that people are probably facing pretty frequently, and then coming up with a way to utilize your skill set in order to address or solve those problems on other people's behalf. And again, optimally, this would be presented in a way that has an asymmetric value add in the customer's favor. Because people don't just want a decent deal; they want a great deal, and you as a business owner want to have the mindset that they deserve the best deal possible, and that's how you build something like Z&G Emporium. You give people access to the best possible service. And when thinking about this, like $13 bulk rating at GemInspector, that's exactly what I'm modeling this after. The more people submit to GemInspector or to CGC through GemInspector, the lower the fee is going to get per card, and that savings will always be passed on to the customers. Obviously, I have like a margin that I'm wanting to make off the difference between what I pay versus what the customer pays, but we're able to effectively reduce that amount. And that's obvious. Like, I'm not nothing groundbreaking there. I'm operating a business, right? Like, business is a revenue generating opportunity, and so that's what it exists for, right? Just to be candid. But the idea being that the more volume we get through CGC's doors through GemInspector, the better rate I'm able to get to submit cards to CGC, thereby better rate I'm able to pass on to the customer. So everybody's gonna be able to submit cheaper the more people, with the higher amount of people submitting through GemInspector. And passing on the savings like that is not just beneficial for your business, but it's beneficial for, I think, the health of the hobby itself, right? Like, if everybody constantly feels like they're being exploited, no one's going to want to be here. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're always the last kid picked at kickball, you're not going to want to play kickball forever. And so that's kind of like a simplistic way of framing it, I guess. It's like the more people are being rewarded and having fun and getting good deals in the space, the more likely everybody is to continue participating and enjoying this thing that we have a mutual appreciation for. And so I think that is a good kind of fundamental view to have when trying to wrap your brain around the idea of doing business in the space. But again, I think a lot of people fixate too much on the idea of investing in sealed product and single cards, and a lot of people get too caught up in the idea of reselling and just churning and burning as much as possible, because again, like, you can only spend to zero. Asterisk, like you can spend past zero, I guess, if you're willing to leverage, but you can only spend as much money as you have access to. And once that amount is maxed out or whatever, the jig is kind of up. You have to wait for the returns to start flowing in before you can begin deploying cash again, and that's a massive restriction. And there are ways to conduct business in the space that don't require that. They just require a willingness to act and a skill set that can be largely utilized by others. And so that is something that I think you guys should put some thought into this week. Thank you again so much for watching. Once more, you can check out geminspector.com for access to pre-grading for just $1 a card, as well as CGC bulk grading for $13 and dropping. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.